All right, with that, we'll get into the presentation and hopefully all of you understand the agenda that we have. So let's start. What are extracurricular activities? Really simply put, anything that happens outside of your academic life is extracurricular, and that's where the extra comes in. And like it's outside of like the curriculum of your academic life. And this can include any hobbies that you have, sports that you play at the school or in a separate league, any community service opportunities that you pursue, being employed at an unpaid or paid internship, or even working at a fast food chain or Target, that can work as extracurricular activities. Participating in student government, for example, generally schools have like a vice president, president, secretary, and treasurer for each class. And also educational clubs. And I think this is the most prominent way of extracurricular activities. For example, educational clubs can include doing robotics or science Olympiad, stuff like that. And we'll get into that later on in the session about what specific examples of these educational clubs are. And I think something really important about extracurricular activities, I'll mention this and stress this throughout the session. Make sure you're having fun about what you're doing and that you're really passionate about the activities you do. Because with extracurricular activities, you want to be really dedicated. And if you're not, and if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're definitely going to end up finding it tough to stay dedicated. And you don't want extracurricular activities to end up being a burden on you. And these extracurricular activities, just like your academics, are going to be viewed in the context of your opportunities. Now, if you've joined some of our previous sessions, you know what that means. But if you don't worry, we'll get into that. So what it means by viewed in the context of your opportunities, try to take a moment really quickly and read this quote from UC Santa Cruz. And we've presented this, like I said, in a couple of our previous sessions. But I think this is something super important that people sometimes overlook about the college admissions process. And what it means is, let's say at your school, there's only a certain number of clubs that you can join maybe. And let's say they only allow you to join 2 clubs. Now that's generally not the case, but this is just a hypothetical scenario that I'm making up. If you're only allowed to join 2 clubs, the college will know that. And they won't compare you and say like, oh, this student at a different school is in like 10, 15 other clubs, but you're only in 2 clubs. They're not going to look at that negatively because you're only allowed to join 2 clubs. And this is similar to the APs. Some schools have limits on how many APs they can take. And you're not going to be compared against a different student who is allowed to take more APs. It's really what your opportunities present to you and how you take advantage of them. Now let's get to extracurricular activities. For the sake of this session, I'm saying extracurricular activities a lot. It's a really long word. I'm going to condense that to ECs for the rest of the session. I think that'll really help. So if I ever say ECs, I'm referring to extracurricular activities. So ECs in the college application. In your college application, there's really several places where you can talk about ECs that you did. For example, in the activity list and essay prompts for UCs and supplemental essays. So in the activity list, if you notice, if I can annotate really quickly, right here, you have for the UCs and the common application, this stuff. If you're not aware what common application is, don't worry. We'll get into that in a future session for sure. But right here, there's a place to say what volunteer and community service you've done, any work experience you had, and they even have a section for extracurricular activities. So definitely at all times, extracurricular ECs are super, super important, and there are places to mention them in the college application. So if I can find a way to, oh, sorry. Can you guys still see the slideshow? Yes. Okay. So, and if you take a look at UC essays prompt number 1, describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. In order to get a leadership experience, you're often going to need to be in an extracurricular. For example, let's say you are on a sports team and you end up becoming the captain of that sports team in your junior or senior year, and you're really able to take that sports team to the next level. That's something that you could talk about there. And for that, extracurricular activities are super, super important. If you also take a look at prompt number 3, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? To demonstrate one of your talents, ECs are a great way to do so. And if you take a look at some of the other prompts, you'll definitely find that ECs are important. And you can talk about them in your activity list or your essays. And while we did talk about the UC essays, a lot of you are also most likely going to end up applying to out-of-state colleges. And so I have two examples of essays, one from Purdue, which is in Indiana, and one from UT Austin, which is in Austin, Texas. So the Purdue prompt, please briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences. That's a really straightforward prompt. They're just asking you to talk about one of your ECs. And without being an ECs, you won't be able to answer that prompt well. Now, UT Austin is a bit different and a bit more elaborate. Describe how your experiences, perspectives, talents, and or your involvement in leadership activities at your school, job, community, or within your family will help you to make an impact both in and out of the classroom while enrolled at UT. Now, if you don't know what UT is, just like UC, which is University of California, UT is University of Texas. So now they're asking you, so describe how your experiences, perspectives, talents at your school, job, community, or within your family. So they're asking you to describe how your ECs, let's condense that into ECs, in leadership activities. So kind of like what we saw in UCSA prompt 1 about leadership activities. So describe how your ECs will help you to make an impact at University of Texas at Austin. So they're having you connect two parts. So they're asking you to connect your high school leadership experience to how you'll be able to make the college a better place. So why they should elect you as a student. So this is kind of a combination of a, what you did in high school, plus a why you want to attend that college essay. So now, hopefully with all these examples, you all are seeing why extracurricular activities are important and how your essay writing process will be a lot easier if you're dedicated to your ECs. So again, it's a great way to show your passion for a certain subject, and if not a certain subject, a way to show your passion for community service or something that's unique to you. And this can be shown through joining a club at the school or making your own organization or something along these lines. And now while we talked a lot about why extracurricular activities are important in the college application and in general for you as an individual to explore your interests, we want to give you guys a plethora of examples for different majors because we know you are all coming from different backgrounds. Some of you might be interested in CS, some in math, some in humanities, some in medical, some in business. So I will hand it off to Preet right here, and he's going to be talking about computer science, math, and engineering extracurricular examples.
Yeah, thank you, Raul. So we can go on to the next slide. So there are plenty of examples of CS extracurricular opportunities. So of course, a few of them are offered at school, and these are very common at almost every single school. AI Club, FTC Robotics, Goals of Code, iOS development. So all of these, all are computer science opportunities and extracurriculars offered at most schools. So I'll go one by one. AI Club. Basically, you talk about AI and have a few pieces of code involved in making a particular AI, along with research from different AI technologies and going to different companies and researching on AI technologies and working with them to create new AIs. FTC Robotics. Basically, when you're building or coding a robot, you code the robot and build the robot for competing in the first tech challenge. And you code languages such as Java and create autonomous pathways. And you code the robot as well as other outreach events for FTC robotics using code. Then comes Girls of Code. Of course, this is primarily only for girls in the club, and they learn about coding in languages such as Python and Java, HTML and CSS, as well as they do midterm projects as well on outreach, and they work with different organizations and clubs to support a cause. Following that comes the iOS app development. So basically, in this club, all you do is you create iOS applications for different purposes with numerous companies. And following that are TSA and USA Co. So Technology Student Association and United States of America Competing Olympiads. So Rahul will talk a little bit more about these two.
Yeah, so TSA for the Technology Student Association, they really participate in both computer science and business related competitions. So this could go in either section. And most of these clubs are pretty standard at most public high schools. But if one of these clubs are not standard, we'll get into making your own club later in the slideshow. And if you're interested in any of these topics and these clubs don't already exist in your school, you'll most likely be able to create your own club, which is another great way of showing leadership. But USACO, let's get to USACO. I think that's a really interesting one. And there are different levels that you can get to by doing tons of coding practice problems, or not practice, coding problems in competitions. And the different levels are bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And if you reach platinum, you're with an exclusive group of students, which not a lot of people reach because USACO requires tons of time commitment. The problems do get harder as you go on, and they can get really difficult where you need to be really a great problem solver in order to make an algorithm and also be able to convert that into code. So if you do get to platinum, that's absolutely great because, again, as I mentioned, you're with an exclusive group of students. Not many people get to that level. And even if you're only able to get bronze, silver, gold, that's still a good achievement in itself. So you can take a look more about USACO on their direct website. If you just search up USACO on Google, you'll get more information.
Yeah. And well, you can continue with that.
Yeah. I'll continue for math, and then I'll hand it off to Preet for engineering. So math, generally, primarily confident that your school will have a math club. At your school, it's pretty general. And what they do is they participate in both competitive individual and group math competitions. I think two of the most common ones that you probably find throughout high school are the AMC 10 and the AMC 12. And these are for students, the AMC 10 is for students in 10th grade and below, while the AMC 12 is for students in 12th grade and below. And performing well on these tests can definitely boost you to national competitions. And getting higher and higher will help you add more stuff to your activity list, as well as explore your own interest in math. And I think Math Club, they generally do practice sessions a lot so that when you get to the competition time, you're really ready and you feel like the test is easier than other students would find it. And if you've taken the AMC before, you know how difficult it is. It's not a regular math test, and it's not something you just look. It's not like in 9th and 10th grade, you learn geometry and pre-calc, and then those concepts are directly tested on the AMC 10. The AMC 10 is a more difficult test. It makes you apply your math skills to a larger basis, if that makes sense. Kind of like think about computer science the same way. USACO is not directly testing whether you know Java or not. You need to problem solve, and math, the AMC 10, AMC 12, and other national competitions work the same way. So I think if you're interested in math, you should definitely join the math club or create your own and work. I think competitions is really important for math, being able to do well in competitions. And I'll hand it off to for engineering.
Oh, yeah. So before we continue, there's also something called Math Olympiad in most schools, another competition-based program that most students enjoy. And this is primarily for students that are very highly advanced in math and compete for gold events, and you get placings such as gold, silver, and bronze. And these are actually really impactful on your college application. So yeah, now we can move on to extracurriculars. So a few examples of extracurricular activities in school are FTC and VEX robotics. So FTC is for both male and females, whereas VEX is primarily towards females. And what they do is they build robots and they compete at robotics competitions, which they can earn awards with. And again, this is really impactful for a college application. Following that, Science and Eco Club, coming up with engineering-based solutions to environmental problems in the real world. So, for example, if you have, let's say your problem is trash and people are not throwing it properly. So trash can be sorted out in a trash sorter. So something like that would be what Science and Eco Club would do. And I think our FTC team actually did the same thing, and we created this trash sorter. So something like that. And then there's also 3D Printing Club. I'm not sure if every single school has this, but a lot of schools do tend to keep clubs like this. In this club, basically learn about parts from 3D printers, how to operate them, and sometimes there may be many opportunities to build 3D printers themselves. And again, if these clubs are not at your school, there's always a good opportunity to create one. So following that, I think.
Yeah, one second. Sorry to interrupt. But so these are some examples, right? FTC, VEX, Science and Eco Club, and 3D printing. But there's tons for engineering and science, especially STEM. There's tons of topics. For example, maybe you're more interested in space. There might be an astrophysics club at your school. Or maybe there's not, and you're really interested in space, or you're really interested in aviation. You're really interested in seeing planes fly or creating planes or looking into aerodynamics. You really need to find something you're super, super interested in, and you need to show college admissions officer that you truly are really interested in that. And if aerospace is your thing, then try to make an aviation club at your school if that doesn't already exist. Or if space is your thing and one of your goals is maybe to explore space in the future, become an astronaut, go to the moon, and make an astrophysics club, get some telescopes, and keep it moving. So yeah, so thank you to Preet for presenting the engineering club. And I think Aryan will be talking about medical and all other sciences.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Rahul. So now I'm going to be talking about medical and other sciences extracurricular examples. So volunteering at a hospital is a great way to show your passion in entering the medical field. You can visit your local hospital's website or call them to ask to see if they accept volunteers. Joining clubs at school is also a great way to cultivate your interest in the medical field. So you can check out the bio, which is biology, anatomy, neuroscience, and other clubs at your school. If you become an officer in these clubs, that's even better. If your school does not have one of these clubs and say you want to join them, then you can start your own club, which is even better than being an officer of a club, because when you start your own club, you're most likely to become president. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So competitions are a great way to showcase your passion and talent for the medical field. The U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, National Science Bowl is a nationwide academic competition that tests students' knowledge in all areas of science, including biology and mathematics. This competition happens in teams. These teams face off in a fast-paced question-and-answer format, being tested on a range of science disciplines, including bio, chem, earth science, physics, energy, and math. So if you and your team earns a good position on this extracurricular competition, then that's going to be even better for your college apps. HOSA, Future Health Professionals, provides guidance to high schoolers who are interested in pursuing health-related careers. HOSA organizations offer students an opportunity to simultaneously learn about medical careers and show off their knowledge in their competitions. This is also a great thing to put on your college application. So another competition is the Biology Olympiad. It's the premier bio competition for high school students in the US. It provides the motivation, curricular resources, and skills training to take them beyond their classroom experience to the level of international competitiveness. There's also the Chemistry Olympiad, so be sure to check that out too. For any of these, if you want to learn more about them, you can just search them up and they'll show up in the search results. Next slide. Shadowing a local doctor, interning, and conducting research are also great ways to develop your interest and passion in medicine. You can contact your local health clinic or hospital to ask if you could shadow a doctor. It entails observing their day-to-day duties and helping out a bit here and there if asked. Taking internships is also a great way to demonstrate your passion. We discussed internships in our last volunteering opportunity slideshow, so I'm not going to be going too in-depth with that. You can view the recording on our YouTube channel in case you weren't able to attend that session. Lastly, conducting research is a great way to demonstrate your passion in pursuing medicine. It's also pretty unique because not everyone has research opportunities. You can either apply to... Go ahead.
Oh. Sorry, do you want to stay on this slide?
Oh, yeah. You can either apply to a designated research program such as the Stanford Institutes of Medicine Summer Research Program, or you can reach out to members of or faculty of academic institutions on your own, such as the Columbia University Irving Medical Center. In the Stanford Institutes of Medicine Summer Research Program, you can perform basic research with staff, Stanford faculty, students, postdoctoral fellows, and researchers on a medically oriented project. The Columbia University Irving Medical Center is a clinical research and educational enterprise located on a campus in northern Manhattan. Again, if you want more information on these, you can just Google them. Since they're very popular searches, they're going to show up. Okay, I'll hand it off to Karthik for business opportunities.
Yeah, 1 second, just a quick interjection. But yeah, so thank you, Aryan. So Aryan talked in this final slide a lot about medical internships, shadowing, and research. So I think that's something we didn't really, I think is more prevalent for medical, especially shadowing, because shadowing a doctor is a huge thing, because when you shadow a doctor, you really start to gain some experience of some hands-on experience, as well as research opportunities. For colleges such as Stanford, they really look to ensure that you're doing research opportunities, whether it be individual research or certain research with the professor at the college. So being able to do research like this is really, really important and can definitely help. And that's also a way of showing your passion in a subject and can work as an extracurricular activity. And I think Preet is next up with business.
Yeah. So, yeah, we can go on to the next slide. Okay. So basically, of course, there's plenty of business opportunities in school. One of the most common being DECA. DECA is basically where a bunch of different group members go together and they find a bunch of different sources and create small businesses or nonprofits and startups, which they compete in a competition. Basically, their goal would be to create a business plan and a business um, sustainability plan, which they use and they sell their products. They actually go through the market chain and supply chain and they sell their products. And uh, teams advance based on how good they present in the judges and how well they move on forward in their business. Um, Something similar to that is Genius Olympiad, and this is for grades 8 through 12, where students write a pitch of pro environmental idea, and finalists are chosen based on judging. And the pro environmental idea talks about the finances, how they're gonna get the money, uh, how they're gonna present the idea, pitching it, marketing, and all of that. Following that, there's also another challenge called the Conrad Challenge. Basically, this challenge is creating an innovative idea about one of the following: aerospace and aviation, cyber technology, security, energy and environment, health and nutrition, transforming education through technology. And all this is judged based on round one, round two, and round three. So round one is basically an investor's pitch, where you come up with a plan and you give a pitch for investors. Following that would be round two, which is the business plan, where you give your business plan to the judges and explain the business plan, how you start off from step one all the way to step 10 or whatever, however many steps you have. And finally, round three would be your final innovation and how you've worked throughout like the months that you spent to create your business plan, your investor's pitch, and your product. So these are a bunch of different business launch opportunities. And following that, I think Karthik will take over the humanities and extracurricular examples.
So for the Conrad Challenge, would you compare that maybe to an episode of Shark Tank?
Yeah, basically. Great job. So yeah, Conrad is basically a kid's version of Shark Tank, and kids all over the world will go here and they'll choose an idea that they would like, and they would pitch it, and then they'll show their business plan, what they feel their earnings will be, what they feel their revenue will be, and then they'll talk about why their product is worthy of being prized or being awarded to their final innovation. So these are all tips for business launching opportunities.
So for the humanities, next slide. So I'll first be talking about school opportunities in schools. So for the humanities, schools can have a wide range of clubs, such as a school newspaper, writing or theater clubs, speech and debate, and mock trial. In school newspapers, students will get to pick topics that they're interested in and develop their journalism skills in writing their own article. Writing in theater clubs will allow students to let their creativity grow when writing pieces or acting in plays. Speech and debate and mock trial allow students to not only practice their writing and speaking skills, but how well they can support their argument. In speech and debate, there are many events that you can choose, such as Lincoln-Douglas debate or expository speech. In mock trial, students will receive a case and work with real attorneys and prosecutors to develop their arguments. Then, students will have a trial in a real courtroom with both sides debating about whether the defendant is innocent or guilty. Both of these clubs, the speech and debate and mock trial, are also great for students interested in a career in law. And just, by the way, this is not a complete list of all the humanities clubs that can be in your school, so just these are a couple examples. And then for outside of school activities, two competitions are the Academic Decathlon and the National History Day contest. So next slide. So the Academic Decathlon is a national level competition with several events, many of which are based on the humanities. So it's like basically a trivia contest. And students have to assemble a team of 9 people with every 3 groups of 3 students having a GPA in a different range, as you can see in the picture in the middle. By participating in this event, students can spend time learning about the subjects they love while showing leadership when assembling and leading their team through the competition. And then next slide. wrong. Okay. The National History Day contest is a national event where students pick a historical topic to research about. This year's theme is Debate and Diplomacy in History, Successes, Failures, Consequences. Apart from this theme, students are given free roam when picking their historical topic to delve into. And submissions can be in form of paper reports, documentaries, websites, and presentations. On top of gaining prestige when winning, students are also eligible for scholarships.
All right, thank you, Karthik. So now we get to the final part of the presentation before we'll be transitioning to Q&A, and this is how to choose your extracurricular activities. So now we just went over a bunch for CS, math, engineering, medical, other sciences, business, and humanities. And I know that was a lot of information to take in, a lot of examples, and you may be super confused on which activities you actually want to pursue. So I think this might come off as a really cliche statement that you've heard at a lot of places. Follow your interests and passions. So now I'm sure, you've done some stuff in middle school, or maybe you didn't, which is fine. If you've done stuff in middle school and you really enjoyed what you were doing, you probably want to continue those interests into high school. Now, if you didn't do anything in middle school, that's totally fine. That's what the beginning of high school can also be for. So understand what you want to pursue for your juniors, for your sophomore, junior, and senior years. So you can really use your freshman year to finalize your extracurricular activities and understand what you'll be pursuing throughout high school. So for example, maybe generally at schools, at least at our school at American High, there are around 60, 70 clubs. There might be 60, 70 clubs at your school as well, or there might not. So out of those 60, 70 clubs, I definitely don't recommend joining all of them to explore your interests, because I might recommend joining maybe 6 or 7 out of those 60 to 70. All right, so maybe you join 6 to 7 of those. All of those clubs do not have to relate to your major. They can be whatever you're interested in. Maybe you definitely want a couple in there that relate to your major, but they're not required that all of them do it. Because some of them could. We have a Red Cross club at our school. If you're not familiar with the Red Cross, they're basically a huge community service organization in the United States, and they have international and local impact. And there's a Red Cross club chapter at our school. And if I'm interested in CS, the Red Cross club has nothing to do with computer science, but I may still join it to show my passion for community service, which the Red Cross club really shows. So maybe during your freshman year, like I said, you join 6 to 7 clubs. Then you join all the information. Generally, clubs have informational meetings at the start of the year. And maybe you realize, okay, 1 or 2 don't really sound that interesting to you anymore. And now you're around 5 clubs. Now that you're at 5 clubs, I do not recommend trying to stay fully committed to 5 different clubs, because that will take a really big toll on you unless you're able to handle your academics, maybe some standardized testing, extracurriculars, and maybe internships over the summer that you do, or research opportunities that you pursue over the summer. That might be really difficult on you. Some of you may be able to handle it, but if you're really committed to 5 activities, I've generally not seen many people successful handling 5 clubs, several APs, etc. What I would suggest, out of those 5 clubs that you see, maybe for the first couple months in freshman year, when maybe your academics aren't really that loaded yet, maybe the first couple months, sorry, let me turn on my lights. All right. So maybe the first couple months, you just join the meetings here and there and understand, and then you start to get a feel for it. Maybe you join the school's FTC team and you spend 3 months there and you realize maybe FTC is not your thing. You're not really having fun there, or you're not really able to pick up anything there. And then you can end up maybe dropping out of the team, right? So what I'm really saying here is maybe you want to start seeing what your interests are in freshman year, because that is really early to decide. And then based on that, you narrow it down. And once freshman year is kind of done, or you're wrapping up your freshman year, I would recommend being really committed to 2 or 3 clubs or organizations. So maybe you're only in 1 club at your school and you're really, really committed to that, but you have 1 organization outside. And that's what that first bullet point's really saying. You can be a ball with a spike. So really well-rounded with 1 or 2 glaring strengths. And so yeah, end of freshman year, I would recommend really committed to 2 or 3 activities. And I think we've said this throughout the session. You can try making your own club at the school, albeit some schools, it can be somewhat difficult because the administration makes it kind of difficult. But I would definitely recommend trying really hard, applying, getting officers for your clubs. And Because if there's something that you're interested in, like I said, aviation, our school currently doesn't, while they do have an astrophysics club that, looks at space and analyzes stuff like constellations and stuff, we don't have an aerospace club or an aviation club. And I think, although I'm not super interested in aviation, if there was an individual who was, if I was that individual, I'd probably try creating an aviation club and try to stay diversified. For example, as I mentioned, if you are interested in CS, they don't all have to be CS related. One of your activities could be general and community service related. So that's how you should go about choosing your extracurricular activities. You can always drop out, and you also want to explore your interests and make sure your ECs don't end up being a burden on you. Because when you do that for 4 years throughout high school, you want to make sure you're passionate about what you're doing. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. And now that's perfect timing, is that's 35 minutes in, and we want to leave around half the session for Q&A to answer all of your questions. So feel free to put any questions in the chat, and once we get through all the questions in the chat, we will open up to live Q&A where you can unmute yourself. And I think one of us will put the link to, yeah, thank you, Preet. So Preet just put the link to the Q&A document in the chat, and we'll be following along. So let me open that up really quickly. So hopefully you all found that presentation informative. And now if you have any questions about the presentation or something that relates to you specifically, feel free to let us know and we can answer that question. So I did get some questions in the chat DM'd to me. So I will put those on the document as well. So actually, we'll take a 30-second pause real quick. If you want to go to take a quick 30-second break, I'm going to go copy paste those questions in the document real quick, and then we shall continue. So we'll get started at 6:38. Does that sound good? So just take a quick 1-minute break and we'll get started. And in the meantime, make sure to get on that document if you are interested in following along with the Q&A. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the question. Feel free to continue putting questions in the chat. And after we get through the questions in the chat, as I mentioned, we will open it up for live Q&A. So Preet, Karthik, and Arnie, if you guys can help me with filling out the Q&A document as I give out answers, that'd be great. So would you recommend doing FTC or FRC? Well, here's how I look at it. I'm on an FTC team. I have not done FRC personally, and my view might be biased because of that. I'll let you know that. I'll let you know, because I'm on an FTC team. My view might be biased, but I do recommend doing FTC. For one main reason is because FRC is a lot more complicated, which is good, because maybe you learn more stuff in FRC because it's a lot more complicated. But FTC teams are limited to having 15 people, while FRC teams have a much larger limit. And I know an FRC team that's based in Fremont, California, and has almost 80 people. So when there's 80 people, I talked to some people on an FRC team because I had this dilemma when I was in my freshman year. I was like, should I do FTC or should I do FRC? FRC sounds really cool because you build these massive robots. For FTC, you only build 18-inch robots. But for FRC, they go like multiple feet. So I'm like, which one do I do? FRC sounds cooler. And I was actually tending towards FRC. But then I talked to a couple people. I also talked to my brother. And I talked to someone who was on an FRC team. And what they told me was that since there were almost 80 people on the team, at the end of the day, all they do in a meeting was put one or two screws in, or maybe write a couple lines of code. And that may be how that one FRC team functioned. Other FRC teams may function in a different way. But in terms of a learning experience, when there's less people and there's more for you to do, in my opinion, you learn a lot more and you'll be able to take a lot more from that experience and translate that to your college application and your future. So that's why I would recommend doing FTC. And hopefully that clarifies your question. If you have any more specific questions about FTC versus FRC, feel free to let us know. Should we give importance to competitions or clubs/organizations? Whatever suits you best. For me as a person, and after I respond to this, I'll let either Preet, Karthik, or Aryan chime in. For me as a person, I'm not a fan of competitions. While I do really like competitions, like for example, I'm in FTC. While that is a club, we go to competitions, and I really like performing there. I really like performing well there, right? But what I really enjoy more in FTC is I like being able to learn, code the robot, and help the community through the outreach experiences. But if you're in a math club, for example, math club, you need to do well in competitions in order to be able to gain prominence in that club, or really get to a higher level in that club. So based on your interests, whether you should attribute importance to competitions or clubs/organizations changes. But if you're able to have a good balance of both, that might be good as well. If you're able to have a good balance, that's great. But for me personally, I like clubs and organizations, but that becomes a personal choice. And so that's why I want to let Preet, Karthik, or Aryan chime in if they have a similar viewpoint or a contrasting viewpoint.
Yeah, no, definitely. I also share a similar viewpoint. Personally, for me, I really like challenges, and I only get challenges when I'm competing against someone or like with someone, and I feel that I always want to win. And of course, that's not always possible. I always want to win. I try my best. So I would rather prefer a competition over a club or an organization, just because I feel that when you have that competition, you're forced to work, and that gives you this like willingness to work hard and just persevere through like all the hard work and just put time and commit to whatever activity you're doing and give it everything you have, and that also gives you a good learning experience.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to what Preet said. I actually think that clubs or organizations are better because they allow you, you can learn from them. They help you develop your leadership experience, and they also give you substance to write your personal development essays when you apply to colleges. So I think clubs and organizations are better, but then again, it depends on your personal opinion. Go with what suits you best.
And so, yeah, at the end of the day, there's really no right or wrong answer to that question. But hopefully our viewpoints definitely helps you out. So do extracurriculars done in middle school help for college? So any extracurriculars that you do in middle school, you cannot put that on your college application as one of your extracurricular activities. It all has to be freshman year and afterwards. However, that being said, you can use middle school as a way to explore your interests if you don't want to push that all the way to freshman year. For example, in 6th grade when I was in middle school or elementary, I joined an FLL team, First Lego League. And doing FLL in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade really set up my foundation. And really, after doing FLL for 3 years, I'm like, there's nothing better in life than robotics. And so that's why in freshman year, I knew that I wanted to do FTC, or after deciding between FTC and FRC, I knew I wanted to do FTC. And I ended up going in. I ended up doing FTC. I decided immediately, and even currently, I'm still really committed to the team and working. So that's why you can use middle school as a way to prep you for freshman year and to explore your interests, but you cannot put any of that on your college application. All right. Can you do an internship in freshman year, and what is the process for an internship? Yes, you can. I mean, you can do an internship in your freshman year. While it is more difficult to get one earlier in your high school career, it is possible. The process for an internship, some places have applications that you can do research opportunities for internships at. But the most common way that I've heard from people and how I was able to get an internship myself in my sophomore and junior year is through connections that your parents have. They could be direct connections. Maybe your parent works somewhere and they can give you an internship there, or your parent has a family friend and that family friend can give you a connection there. So connections are arguably the best way to get an internship. And I think the process for an internship, there's some applications there, but the odds applying can be a lot of work. Getting in can be difficult. There's no guarantee, and that's why connections can sometimes guarantee some more stuff. However, for research opportunities generally, since we're on the topic of this, the process for it is generally cold emailing professors. So professors at different universities that you might be interested in going in. So I know people who have made lists of hundreds of professors, and they're really interested in doing research. What they do is they email hundreds of professors. Out of those, I know one individual student who emailed over 150 professors. Only 2 responded. One was a no and one was a yes. So I think you need to email a lot if you're interested in doing research opportunities with professors, and the success rate may not always be high, but don't be discouraged by that. And how do you find internships for your career pathway? I think I kind of just explained that through connections. I think 80 to 90% of people I've talked to, they've gotten it through connections that their parents have. And I mean, if you do end up getting a college counselor or something before your junior or senior year, then I'm sure your counselor can help you with finding some internship opportunities as well. All right. And if you have any follow-up questions on the questions I'm answering, maybe my answers aren't clear enough, feel free to ask follow-up questions in the chat. All right, is it mandatory to do club leadership positions for college applications? So yeah, I think someone already started typing the answer on the Google document. And whoever's typing, if you guys want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
So sure. So again, I do not agree with that. It's not mandatory to become a leadership position or have a leadership position to put on a college application. That's almost not always required. But although it is better to have one, so it shows that you have impact on that organization or club. However, it is not mandatory because you can be a part of a robotics team. Like for example, we've been talking about FGC. So for sake of it, just as an example, if you're a member of an FTC team, you can still put that on your college application, saying how much you have impacted as a member. You don't have to say that you're a leader at the club or organization. Well, and you cannot. You shouldn't always say that you're impacted that way. So there are multiple ways of saying, or using the extracurricular activity in your college application. I hope that clears the question.
I think Preet brings up a really good point in that. Let me actually see. Sorry, I'm gonna open up. I think Preet brought up a really good point that we forgot to touch on. So I'm actually gonna pull up the common application prompts real quick. And when I was brainstorming for my common application essay, I came across one of these prompts, and I forgot if it was common application prompt or something else. Okay. Let's take a look at prompt number 3 right here. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? Or if you also look at, actually, let's talk about 2. I think 2 works better for this. The lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So let's just take an example. You're on a sports team, right? The sports team performs extremely poorly. And I think a lot of students might take prompt 2 and say like, oh, I'm going to say, okay, in my junior, senior year, I became the captain of the sports team. And now I'm going to talk about how as captain, I revolutionized the sports team. And now it's much better than what it used to be, right? That does not have to be the case at all. As a member, you can do a lot. You can impact the team greatly. I think that might make for a more unique essay, because a lot of people might say, oh, as captain, I did this. As captain, I did this. But you guys start thinking, do you need to be captain to have an impact? Are you waiting to get the leadership position to have an impact? Or are you having an impact even before you get that leadership position? So as Preet mentioned, it's not at all mandatory. While it can help at some places, for example, you're on an activity list, and to show personal growth, it's not mandatory at all. And you can definitely still do great stuff in a club without leadership position. How many ECs are required for college applications? 0. I mean, there's no requirement on how many ECs you do, but it's really how many you can handle and how many you're interested in. And there's absolutely no requirement. And I also have really no clue on how many college admissions officers expect. But I can tell you that it is quality over quantity, in the sense that if you're in 10 different clubs, college and you're only participating like here and there, and you really didn't take much away from each of those clubs, and you're just in it to increase your number of your count, that's not going to help you that much for the college application and overall, for your future. Versus if you're really committed in 2 or 3 clubs and you can take a lot away from those clubs, I think admissions officers would definitely prefer that. Understanding your quality of dedication and time commitment. By which year in high school do you have to decide your major? I have a couple of friends right now who are seniors with me, and they still don't know what major they're interested in. And their college applications are due in a couple months from now. And so there's no place where you have to decide your major by. But if I was to recommend when you should decide your major by, I would probably say the end of your freshman or the start of your sophomore year, because that's also when you want to finalize the clubs that you're in, the activities that you're going to stay dedicated to, right? And if you as I mentioned, well, all of your ECs don't need to be connected to your major. You definitely want some of them to be. And so by the end of your freshman year or the start of your sophomore year, it'd be a good idea to have what major you want to do down. And if it takes some people longer. For some people, it's more difficult than others. And if that is the case, don't worry. Just continue exploring your interests by different means, by individual research, group research on a club or a team, or courses at your school, community college courses. There's different ways to explore your interests. Keep exploring until you click with the subject and you realize, okay, this is the major I want to do in college, because that's a huge decision in life, what you end up doing. So there's no deadline, but I would suggest early sophomore year or end of freshman year. Are there any other ways to get internships besides connections? Of course, not everybody has connections, and we recognize that. I think the world recognizes that. And so while it is easier to get it with connections, there are definitely some applications online for different research opportunities and internships. If you're interested in working at a specific company that you're really interested in, well, of course, you're likely not going to get a response by just emailing Google or emailing Apple. Maybe a smaller company, a startup, you probably have a higher chance of getting a response from them. But there's ways, and I think the best way is emailing or maybe visiting their office. Something like that might be the best way to get an internship besides connections. You got to show them your interest, and you don't want to be just another one of those 1,000 people who email them. You want to show your unique self somehow, and why you as an employee at that company, you can have a true impact there. All right, so we got through those 9 or 10 questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to now either unmute yourself or put it in the chat, and we are happy to get through them. So if you want to take a moment, feel free to think of a question or, yeah. All right, I got 2 questions and I'll paste them. And if you could put the questions to everyone instead of direct messaging me, that would be appreciated. But if you're not comfortable doing that, don't worry, you can direct message me as well. So I just put them on the document. If you have trouble figuring out your career pathway, are there any resources or anything to find the right career pathway? There's no direct answer to this. I would suggest, again, as I mentioned, joining several clubs at the start of your freshman year and then understanding, okay, do I like CS, or do I like math, or do I like engineering, or do I like art, do I like literature? Understanding that is first important. So joining several clubs at the start of your freshman year. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think counselors are there for a reason. They really help you figure out what you're interested in, and what sort of classes do you want to take in the future, how you want to plan your college, and all of that. So definitely, if you can't find, or if you're having trouble with figuring out your career pathway, reach out to your counselor and ask them to help you. They're there for a reason. They're really willing to help you figure out a particular major for yourself, or even sorting out classes between how you want to go in this class or this class and whatnot. So reaching out to counselors will really help when figuring out your pathways.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, counselors are there. I think even in my freshman year, we did an activity with school counselors. They took us to like Naviance. It was like a Naviance portal, and we took like 100-question quiz, and then at the end it'd give you like, based on your answers, it'd give you like top majors that you're likely interested in. So stuff like that, definitely reach out to your counselors. They can help you out. Are freshman grades important for college and internships? Okay, so I'm going to divide that into two separate questions. Are freshman grades important for college, and are freshman grades important for internships? Because the answer does vary. And actually, I'm taking a look at number 12 really quickly, and I think going over number 12 before number 11 will help our conversation with number 11. So we're going to do 12 first. I heard that UCs and CSUs, UCs is University of California and CSU is California State University for those who don't know, only count 10th and 11th grades in the GPA. Is that the same case for other colleges? So yes, you are correct that UCs and CSUs only count 10th and 11th grades. Your freshman and senior, your courses matter, but your grades will not count towards your GPA. So is that the same case for other colleges? No. Private universities such as Carnegie Mellon, MIT, they do care about your grades from 9th to 11th and also the courses you take senior year. By the time you apply to colleges by Carnegie Mellon and MIT or any other private college, you'll likely have not finished your freshman year. You will likely have not finished the first semester of your senior year, and your grade will likely not be available to them. But that doesn't mean you go ahead and get all F senior year, right? Because they can still rescind your application if they see a dramatic decrease in your academic performance. So yeah, private universities do care about grades in all 4 years, but UC is 10th and 11th. But they do care about the courses you take, the rigor, the academic rigor in the courses, although they don't care about, did you get an A, did you get a B, or did you get a C? Okay. So now let's go back to number 11 and 12. Are freshman grades important for college? As I mentioned, for UCs, your grades may not matter, but at the same time for private colleges, they will. And then even if you do end up getting a low grade in freshman year, and you show, let's say in freshman year in English 9 honors, you get a B, and you're disappointing yourself with that. But then you end up in your sophomore year, you end up taking English 10 honors, and you get an A on that. Then that shows improvement. You went from a B to an A in an English course, honors course, and you didn't back away from the challenge. Although you got a B in English 9 honors, you didn't back away from the challenge. You still went on and took English 10 honors. So maybe you can show improvement through your high school grades if you do end up getting a low grade in your freshman year. Now, are freshman grades important for internships? Generally, sometimes for internships, they might ask for grades. Sometimes they may not. But internships, if you're applying for internships in your sophomore year, they probably do care about your freshman year grades because they want to get a full and comprehensive academic record, right? And so they may care about your freshman year grades. But more than grades for internships, they really care more about who you are as a person. While they do care about a resume of stuff you've done, other ECs that you're involved in, they will care about your grades. It's not like they're going to take someone with like mostly B's and C's, right? They definitely want to see you have A's because maybe if you have complete B's and C's, they may think, why would you be a good employee for their company? Or why would you be a good intern? So they do care more about who you are as a person, but it depends on when you apply. Your freshman year grades matter, and also the company you're applying to. Maybe one company doesn't care about your freshman year grade, but another does. But at the end of the day, I think more than these questions, we should just try to always keep our grades high so that these questions won't really matter to us, right? But I think regardless of whether your grades are high or low, you should definitely apply to internships and research opportunities. All right. Is the SAT required for the class of 2025? So if you could clarify your question for if you're referring to UCs, I'll talk about UCs really quickly. So as it's on the doc, SAT is test blind moving forward for all UCs. Test blind means they don't care at all. So, and then for the class of 2025, I did hear that they may or may not, going forward, the UCs might create their own test that they'll use. They're still deciding on that. But the SAT is test blind moving forward for all UCs. However, private institutions across the nation, including California, might still use them. They might end up requiring them. They might end up being test optional or being test blind. There's still a lot of lack of clarity on what colleges will do, but the best way to really find out is to go on the college's website. If you're interested in learning about a specific college, go on their website, they'll definitely have a section talking about SAT or ACT, about whether they require it, whether it's optional, or they're test blind. And you'll definitely be able to find your answer there. But overall, colleges are kind of dispersed currently on their stance about keeping SAT and ACT required or not. So now we've slowly, I think, started to drift away from questions, related to ECs, and we started going to SAT grades, which is totally fine. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to ask us. But if you have any questions related to slideshow or particular to ECs, let us know as well. Well, we did reach the 1 hour mark. It is, I think, 7:01. We are free to stick around if you do have any other questions. All right, so we'll take this one last question that I got in the chat. How do you create a nonprofit? So creating a nonprofit, there are different ways. One is the long way out, and that is a common way to do it, and that is takes around 7 months or so, and it's by hiring an agent. There's a bunch of forms to fill out. You have to file yourself as a 501c3 with the government, and I think the RSI, sorry, I forgot, but I don't remember the exact name. You have to file yourself basically with the government, and you'll most likely need to get an agent because it's really hard to fill out all those forms on your own. Or if you end up getting a college counselor, they can probably help you with that. Your school counselor is most likely not going to help you with this. A separate counselor might, but it takes a while. And but something to keep in mind just related to this question. Oh, sorry, I said school will likely not be able to help out with this process. This is kind of separate from your academic stuff. So, but let's say you make an organization. It does not necessarily need to be a nonprofit for you to consider to be like a success. I think nonprofit is just in the name, but based on the motive of your organization, I think the motive of your organization, that what you do with that organization is a lot more important from the name of being able to call it a nonprofit or not. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these organizations are nonprofits. For Dream Big, even Dream Big, although we don't have the official 501c3 status, we are still a nonprofit because all our services are for free. So while we're not an official nonprofit, I think our motives, our purpose still defines who we are. But related to the question of how you create one itself, one, it can take 7 months. Two, there's also a place called Hack Plus. Preet, do you want to talk really quickly about that?
Basically, Hack Plus is an organization that gives out funding and nonprofit status to companies or startups or nonprofits that go underneath them. So this way, basically, you can apply as a nonprofit, and you have a really quick meeting. And this sponsorship is really like simple, and it's very quick. So you can apply for them, and they will fill out all the forms for you, the 501c3 forms, and they'll help you with all the goals that you have, like getting an official nonprofit, and they'll also help you provide with funding. And of course, that funding has to be reimbursed every now for them, but they'll provide you with funding as a startup or official nonprofit, and you can use that in the future. And it's a really cool way to create your own nonprofit. However, note that you'd have to be under Hack Plus as a nonprofit, but you'd be underneath Hack Plus. So whatever you do would technically belong to Hack Plus.
So yeah, that might be the one disadvantage of going through Hack Plus instead of the longer 7-month way. But to answer the question, these are arguably the two most common ways that we are aware of to make your own nonprofit. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the session. The recording and presentation will be posted soon as the recording is processed. We will send it out on the group chat. It'll be posted on YouTube, and we will also send out the presentation on the session tracking spreadsheet. So once again, thank you everyone for joining. We got a lot of questions today, which we were happy to answer, and we're looking forward to see you all in the next session that we have. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel where we're continuously posting informational YouTube videos. And yeah, I think that brings us to a close for today. Thank you.